Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got my updated optimization and settings guide for Tarkov 1.0. I'm breaking everything down into three main sections: PC optimization, a full settings breakdown, and my recommended presets. If you want the complete picture, I definitely recommend watching the whole guide, but if you're only looking for something specific, feel free to use the timestamps below to jump right to that topic. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, first thing you want to do is update Windows. An easy way to get to your update menu is hit your start menu key, start typing in update. You'll see check for updates pop up. Go ahead and click that and then click check for updates. Mine is fully updated right now, but if you have any, you'll see them populate here. Go ahead and run the updates, install them, restart your system, and then click this again because sometimes after an update completes, you'll see new ones available. Next, you'll want to enable hardware accelerated graphics scheduling. Easy way to access this option: hit the start menu key again, start typing in graphics. You'll see graphics settings pop up. And if you click advanced graphics settings, you'll see hardware accelerated GPU scheduling right here. Go ahead and make sure this is on. And then I also leave optimization for windowed games on as well. Next, this is an often overlooked setting, but for me it makes a big difference in game feel. I'm gonna hit the start menu, type in mouse, and hit mouse settings, and you'll see an option here called enhanced pointer precision. By default, Windows turns this on. In daily use it might be helpful, but for gaming it adds an acceleration algorithm that for me throws off my consistency, so I always leave this off. Alright, so next thing we want to do is update your BIOS. Just type in your motherboard name into Google with BIOS after it. Usually the manufacturer website will pop up first, so I'll go ahead and click that. When you get to your motherboard page, just hit the support tab if you don't get straight to the BIOS page, and click BIOS. You can see the latest version for my board right now that I'm using is 3.5. An easy way to check your BIOS version without actually going into the BIOS and restarting your system is hit Windows R for the run menu and then type in msinfo32. When this pops up, you can see your BIOS version right here, and you can see I'm on 3.5, which corresponds to the latest version. If you're unfamiliar with how to update your BIOS, I do have a quick video on that. It's less than a minute long. Go ahead and check that out if you need help with that. After you update your BIOS, you'll want to configure your BIOS. I've been working on making updated tuning guides, but for now I have one for the 9800X3D, 7800X3D, and 9600X. If you have any questions about your particular motherboard and CPU combo, go ahead and join my Discord and I can help you with that. If I don't have a video up for it now, you can make a request and I'll try my best to get it up there. Next, you're going to want to update your GPU drivers. If you have an Nvidia card, you'll want to download the Nvidia app from Nvidia's website. I'll leave a link in the video description below for that. Once you install the application, go to the drivers tab, hit the refresh button here, and if you have any driver updates available, you'll go ahead and install them right here. If you have an AMD card, you'll want to download the Adrenaline installer. I'll have a link for this as well in the video description below. Basically, you can install this auto detect tool. You'll go ahead and run that installer and update your drivers through this software. If you have an AMD CPU, you can also update your chipset drivers through this tool, okay? So I do recommend you update your chipset drivers along with your BIOS at the same time. After you get your GPU drivers updated, you'll want to configure your GPU control panels. I have a full walkthrough for AMD Adrenaline on my page. I'll leave a link in the upper right hand corner. If you're an Nvidia user, I have an Nvidia control panel settings video on my page. There's a link in the upper right hand corner here. I'm working on making an updated version of this for the Nvidia app, so for now you can use this, but I will make an updated version soon. Next, we're going to take a look at the in-game settings. Alright, first things first, you can set your username here. I think you can change it once every 2 weeks or once every month or something like that. I forget the exact interval, but it is time gated. Once you change your username, you can't change it for a little while again. Second, can change your interface language. They've got a bunch of different languages. Can change your main menu background. So for the next three settings, you can auto hide, always show, or always hide these features on your HUD. First is the quick slots, and you see those at the top of the screen showing your grenade, your melee weapon, and your 1 through 0 hotkeys. Stamina and stance, you can see it in the bottom left here, and you can see that the little icon changes depending on what your stance is at the moment. The top bar is your arm stamina, and the bottom bar is your overall stamina. So lastly is your health condition. It can either be polychrome or monochrome, basically black and white, or you can have colors indicating the health level of your different body parts. I like to have it on polychrome because green means you have full health, red means you're in critical health, and on both color schemes it'll turn black when you lose that body part. And you can see here my legs are yellow because my HP is down to 48 on the legs. So set these according to your own preferences. If you like to have a more realistic no HUD look, then you can have it on auto hide. And if you like to have the status of everything and you don't mind the HUD showing, then you can have them always shown or something in between. Okay, for highlight available operations, basically this helps in your stash. Like if I have it on, like you can see it highlights the wallet when I do the money. If I have an item that can go in a scav case, it'll highlight the scav case. If you turn that off, it doesn't do that anymore. I don't know why you'd want to have it off, but the option is there, and you can change it to mods and stacks as well. But I just leave it on. It helps, in my opinion. The priority window, if you leave it on auto, I'll show you what this does. Let's say you have multiple containers open. When you see this yellow highlight, that means that's where your control click is going to automatically put an item. So if I control click this cat, it'll automatically go in there. And if I highlight this junk box, even though these other ones are open, it's going to automatically put the cat in there. If you put it on manual, it doesn't automatically choose a priority window. You have to click this button to prioritize where your items go. So if I click the prioritize button, it's now going to throw stuff in there. If I click this prioritize button, it'll now use that as the first option. I like leaving it on manual because I like to choose where I'm going to throw things if I'm trying to sort things quickly. Choose this according to your preference. Double click item quick use. I like to leave it on in raid only because sometimes I'll accidentally double click like a moonshine or something and he will actually drink it and there goes 100 to 200k rubles in an instant, right? So I like to leave this on in raid only. If I need to quickly eat something or drink something, it can double click it without having to right click it and choose. You can also choose to have vaulting over medium-sized obstacles set to a hotkey or have him auto mantle things. I like to leave it on hotkey so I don't actually mantle something in the middle of a fight. Continuous medkit healing, if you enable this, once you start the medkit healing process, it will automatically go through and heal any hurt body parts consecutively. I like to leave this disabled so I can choose whether or not I want to do the continuous healing. Because you have the option to hotkey a medkit, and if you hold down that hotkey and use your mouse wheel, you can choose that continuous treatment option manually by hitting full treatment there. I like having the option of individually healing things or doing the full treatment. I usually only do this when I know I'm safe and clear of a fight. A task item warning will tell you if you're about to consume or use a task item. Wishlist item notifications. If you have something in your wish list, it will notify you when you obtain the item. Auto add to wish list. You can already have recipe and hideout upgrade items added to the wish list, or you can have favorite recipes, hideout zones only, or disable it completely. If you want to clear the entire wish list, you can just hit this button here. Next up, we have head bobbing. This is basically only for immersion, really. It shows a head bobbing effect when you're moving. I'll show you the difference here. I always leave it at the minimum because I think that gives me the best visual clarity. If you want more immersion, you can turn this up. I'll show you the difference of what it looks like at minimum versus maximum. Next up, we have FOV. I think most of you know what this is, but it stands for field of view. If you lower it, your field of view gets smaller, but your targets are larger on screen. So we're seeing less of the environment here at 50. And if I set it to max, I can see much more of the environment, but our targets are going to be smaller on screen. So it's a trade-off of more visibility versus bigger targets, really. I like to lean towards a higher FOV so I can have more visibility on screen. So I use a value of 69. Use this according to your preferences. So automatic RAM cleaner, every time I've tried to use this setting, I've gotten stuttering issues. So I personally don't recommend using this setting. Some other people have told me they use it with success, but personally I haven't had success using it. It actually causes stuttering for me, so I recommend leaving this off. Only use physical cores. Leaving it on is theoretically the best setting for Tarkov. Honestly, in my testing, I haven't seen a difference with that option checked on or off. I manually disable SMT through my BIOS, so it's technically using only physical cores anyways, but I leave this option checked on for redundancy, I guess. But to be honest, I haven't seen a difference with any modern chips, whether I leave this on or off. Malfunction notifications. This will display a red warning message in the bottom right. When your weapon malfunctions in game, you'll need to inspect the weapon and then clear the jam or do whatever to fix the issue. I always recommend leaving this on. It does help. Preload hideout, if you have it off, your game will start a little quicker, but it will take a little longer to get into hideout. And if you have this enabled, vice versa. It's just preference, really. Block group invites, this is pretty self-explanatory. The trading intermediate screen, they used to have an old icon screen for the traders, but now it just goes straight to the trader menu. So if you like that old screen, you can turn this back on here. The game has graphics presets, where if you don't want to manually change your settings, you can use these manual presets for very low, medium, high, and ultra graphic settings. I like to manually tune them myself for the best optimization between visuals and performance, but you can also use these as starting points. Moving on to the graphics tab. So for screen resolution, I recommend using your monitor's max resolution. I'm actually running 1440 on my G8 right now. So for example, I'm running a 4K monitor right now, but testing in 1440. So instead of running my display in 4K, I've lowered it down to 1440 as the max display resolution. And the reason we do that right now is because for some reason, running full screen gives you less performance than borderless does. And if you have a higher display resolution than what you're running in game, you're technically still running the higher resolution in the background, and that's going to lower your performance. So if you're running the same resolution as your monitor, you don't have a problem here, but if you're doing something like I am, where I have a 4K monitor and I'm trying to run 1440, just make sure you go into Windows and change your display resolution first, and then go to borderless here. So I'll skip aspect ratio because I just talked about the screen mode, but right now borderless is ideal because for some reason, starting maybe like a few patches ago, full screen gives you less performance than borderless. So I recommend running borderless for now until something changes. This is kind of weird because in most games, full screen is going to be ideal, but for whatever reason, Tarkov being Tarkov, borderless is better right now, okay? For aspect ratio, this is going to be a preference thing. I like 16:9, I just like the regular ratio. I know some people play 16:10. It widens the entire picture up and it makes targets a little wider, but for me, it throws off my left-right movement and I can't track and aim as well. But some people prefer it for the bigger targets. I know some people even play 4:3 coming from CS and stuff like that, but this is going to be a preference thing. Next up, Vsync. I personally don't run Vsync. If you want to give up a little input latency for a little visual smoothness, go ahead and use Vsync and it will lock to your monitor's max refresh rate. In Tarkov 1.0, the new Ultra Textures setting seems to replace what used to be high. Later in the video, I'll show my recommended presets for different GPU tiers, so feel free to skip ahead to that section if that's what you're looking for. For now, here are the actual visual differences between the texture options. Pay close attention to the detailing on the glove's tightening strap and the text printed on the glove. That's where the changes are the most noticeable to me. shadows have a pretty big impact on performance, and you can definitely see that they get sharper as you increase the settings, as I've shown up here. That said, sharper shadows don't really affect my gameplay overall, so I'd much rather take the significant FPS boost over having slightly crisper shadows. So I always leave this setting on low no matter what GPU I'm using. Object LOD quality is going to control when nearby models will change from a detailed model to a less detailed version. So you can see right now, I'm going to use this tree as an example. You can see it swaying in the wind right now. When I move back to a certain distance, you're going to see it blip out and change to a different model. You see that there? So that's what LOD controls. So right now I'm at minimum. Right about at 30 to 32 meters is where it changes. If I change that LOD to 2.5, it adds another, I don't know, 7-8 meters to that draw distance. Okay. And again, if I change it to 3, it's about 45 now. At 3.5, we're looking at about 50-ish meters. And at max LOD, detailed models will draw out to about 55 meters. So from max to minimum, each setting gives you about 5 more meters of draw distance. Okay. The overall visibility setting changes the draw distance of objects in the distance. Here's a comparison of minimum to maximum. In my testing, it barely made an impact in performance, and I always leave this on max. I couldn't tell any difference between setting the cloud quality from low to high, and there was little to no performance impact as well. So I just leave this setting on low just to maximize performance. Anti-aliasing smooths out jagged edges so you don't see that stair-step effect on object outlines. FXAA is the lightest option. It barely touches your FPS and gives you a slight quality boost. TAA adds a bit more smoothing with a slightly higher performance cost. If you're running native resolution, TAA high is the best looking built-in option. But if you're on an Nvidia card, DLSS 4 actually looks better than native, even when you're upscaling. It's the cleanest looking anti-aliasing solution in the game right now. You used to be able to force DLAA manually through the Nvidia app, but that option was removed in recent driver updates. For AMD users, we're going to have to wait until they possibly add FSR 4 or Redstone to have a competing option, but for now TAA high will have to do. Speaking of DLSS, unfortunately with the release of 1.0, if you have DLSS turned on and you use a scoped optic, you'll get this blurry ghosting effect on the magnified image. This was not present in the previous patch, so hopefully they do something to fix this soon. Volumetric lighting creates more realistic light dispersion and can make darker areas brighter and easier to see. The downside is that it can also make flashlights feel a bit more blinding. There's a noticeable performance difference between ultra and off, especially when there are light sources within your draw distance. Turning it off completely though makes the game look much darker, so I prefer keeping this setting on low for the best balance of visibility and performance. DLSS and FSR are both upscaling technologies designed to give you more FPS without tanking your image quality. They render the game at a lower internal resolution and then rebuild the image using their own reconstruction algorithms. For Nvidia users, DLSS 4 is the best option in Tarkov, hands down. For AMD users or anyone on older Nvidia hardware, FSR is your alternative. It's not quite as sharp as DLSS, but it still provides a solid FPS boost, especially on mid-range GPUs. Stick to quality or balanced for the best look. If you're on a really old GPU, you can try performance or ultra performance to kind of get yourself going. Upscaling is most helpful when you're GPU bound at your current native resolution and would like to move up a step in resolution or get a bit more FPS if you're not able to hit your CPU max at the current resolution or graphics setting. HBAO adds ambient occlusion. This creates more realistic shadowing around objects and adds depth to the models. It can start to impact performance noticeably once you move it to high or above. There is a visual difference from off to colored ultra, but to me it's more of like a lateral change. It looks different, but not necessarily better to me personally. If you look closely, you'll see the subtle shading shift on the weapon. I personally leave HBAO off, and again, I'll gladly take the performance gain here. SSR mainly affects reflections on water surfaces. It starts to have a noticeable impact once you set it to medium or higher. Personally, I think it actually makes the water look worse because it has a blurry, smeared texture. And for me, it doesn't provide any meaningful gameplay benefit. So I keep the setting off, and I'll gladly take that extra performance. Anisotropic filtering improves the clarity of textures viewed at an angle. Look at the rocks in the water and the dirt on the ground, and you'll notice they appear less flat and have more depth. This setting does have a moderate performance cost, but to me, the visual improvement is pretty significant. It makes textures look more natural instead of having that pasted on look, almost like a Roblox style flat texture. And I think the per texture option is a great middle ground. The sharpness setting adjusts the edge definition of textures and has a very small impact on performance. At the max value, edges become overly pronounced and can introduce an aliased, harsh look. I prefer keeping sharpness at 0, and in my own experience, it doesn't affect my ability to spot enemies whether it's set to minimum or maximum. By default, the FPS limit will be determined by this slider here. You can go up to 144. If you want to disable this limit, you'll want to check off this box here, and this will allow you to go over 144 if your system is able to do that. And you can set your lobby FPS limit with this slider here. MIP Streaming uses your CPU and storage drive to selectively load textures as you need them. This reduces the GPU's texture load, but it does so by increasing CPU workload. In theory, this should help if you're running into VRAM limitations, but the reality in Tarkov is that we're almost always CPU bound, regardless of the graphics situation. Because of that, the theoretical benefits of MIP Streaming are essentially eliminated. Every time I've tested this setting, enabling MIP Streaming has consistently introduced weird micro stutters and noticeably longer load times when leaving raids, and I've seen no FPS gain or the same FPS. Players say they've seen better results, so go ahead and give it a shot if you're GPU bound like I said, but for me, I've never seen any gains with it, whether I'm using an underpowered GPU or something newer. High quality color changes the color and illumination of the overall game. It has a minor impact on performance, and honestly, if you want to change the colors, I recommend doing it through your graphics card control panel rather than through this option. Z Blur adds a slight bokeh effect to your weapon. This is purely a visual thing. Choose according to your aesthetic preference. There isn't really a performance impact. Chromatic aberration simulates a lens effect that distorts colors. There's not really a performance impact, and honestly, it's hard to tell a visual impact too. I usually leave this off. Noise adds a film grain effect to the image. I don't know why anyone would want to use this, but it's there. Maybe for cinematic effect, I don't know. I always leave this off. Grass shadows add some shading to grass models. Again, there's not really a big performance impact whether it's on or off. And visually, I can't tell if it's an upgrade or not. I usually leave this off. Streets of Tarkov lower texture resolution mode. This will load lower resolution textures when you run streets, just because it does have a very high load. So if you're VRAM limited and you're having trouble running Streets, try using this option and see if your performance increases. PostFX settings can significantly change the look of the game, but they can also have a noticeable performance impact depending on what you enable. Personally, I prefer adjusting my color settings to the GPU control panel instead. It's not identical to PostFX, but you can usually recreate a similar effect using the Nvidia or Adrenalin control panel. The advantage with this is that making these adjustments at the driver level doesn't affect performance. With Nvidia cards, instead of using PostFX, I usually kick up digital vibrance up to about 70 and gamma up to about 1.05. This makes the colors brighter, more saturated, and vibrant. With AMD cards, to get a similar effect, I kick up the brightness and saturation levels in Adrenalin. This is my PYUR50 preset. If you're on a card with 6 GB of VRAM or lower, I think this is a good starting point to get the best performance, and then you can adjust according to your preferences. So here you go. If you're on an older card and you're still getting bad performance, I would recommend trying using AMD FSR and trying out the different quality levels to see if you can increase your performance even more from here. This is what I call my PYUR60 setting. I use this on my 3060. If you have anything in that range of cards, then I would recommend you start with this preset and adjust accordingly. So with textures, I'm going medium, object LOD 2.5, overall viz 3000. I'm switching over to TAA high and leaving off HBAO, SSR, Anisotropic I'm turning on, and I still leave Streets of Tarkov lower resolution mode on for this setting. So this is my PYUR70 setting. I'd use this for something like a 4070, 3080, 6800 XT, something around that range. Textures are going to be kicked up to high this time. And Streets of Tarkov lower texture mode is off now. So this is going to be my PYUR80 preset. I'd use this with cards like the 5070 Ti, 4080, 9070 XT, and anything above. This is basically the best blend of visuals without giving up performance. And I'd recommend you try this preset and adjust according to your preferences if you have a card in that range. Alright, so there you have it, my updated optimization and settings guide for Tarkov 1.0. If you have any more questions, feel free to join my Discord and shoot me a message there. We've also got a really welcoming and knowledgeable community, and I'd love to have you there. Hopefully this helped you dial in your setup and get the most out of your system. If it did, please consider dropping a like and subscribing. It really helps support the channel and lets me keep creating content like this for you guys. And if not, no worries at all. I still appreciate you taking the time to check out the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.